In the 3rd year of our relationship, Fernando still cheated on me. A junior sent me a provocative video, showing me the 18 different positions they did in bed. I turned off my phone and agreed to my professor's offer for an overseas exchange program. On the day of departure, I asked someone to deliver him a box containing a wish ribbon I had cut into pieces, along with dozens of love letters he had written to me when he was 17. On the back of each letter was my reply, little daydreams I had written during my free time, all about our future. That day, Fernando went crazy and chased me all the way to the airport. But I never turned my head back even once. Always look forward. 17-year-old Fernando once told me. Chapter 1. At the celebration dinner after the match, I received 2 WeChat messages at the same time. One was from Fernando, reporting his schedule. Today, the club was having dinner together outside. The other was from Pilar, a junior in the same club as him, a video of her sitting in Fernando's lap, passionately kissing him. Along with the video came a sentence. I have plenty more material like this. Want to see, senior? I didn't reply, but 5 minutes later she still sent me a cloud drive link. So much for your childhood sweetheart romance. Before opening it, I didn't expect the contents to be so filthy. In the video, the man violently tore off the woman's clothes, buried his head in her chest, and then threw her heavily onto the bed before pressing himself over her. The woman moaned softly, Senior, your needs are so big. No wonder Senior Esther can't satisfy you. She must be so boring in bed, right? The man's cold voice cut off her words. Who do you think you are? You have no right to comment on her. Don't mention her to me. You're not worthy. The woman chuckled, entirely unfazed. I'm just joking. Why so mad? What she can't give you, I can. Do you like today's outfit? I have plenty more. And you can rip them off. Slowly, the man's voice was low and hoarse. Stop acting slutty, or you'll be crying later. Their bodies tangled tightly together, their movements growing more and more rough. I hurriedly exited the video, my hands trembling uncontrollably. Was that really the Fernando I knew? I wanted to deny it, but like a form of self-torture, I picked up my phone again and swiped through each video. In a car, in a private cinema, in a hotel, even in the small forest behind the school, there were scenes of them going at it everywhere. The time span covered half a year, and the most recent was from 3 days ago, a screen recording of them having nude video chat. If I remembered correctly, that day Fernando had taken me to his house for dinner. His mother had prepared a separate room for me, so we didn't sleep together. So on that day, with just a wall between us, he was video sexting with someone else. I put my phone down, powerless, my chest heavy and aching as if a boulder was pressing down on it. The Fernando in my memory had bright eyes, a smile that revealed small tiger teeth, and every strand of hair carried the pure, clean air of youth. But the Fernando in the video had eyes full of lust, movements lewd and violent, and his mouth spewed obscene, filthy words. I just couldn't connect these two people in my mind. And yet, they really did share the same face. Chapter 2. I had been with Fernando for 3 years, and never once did I doubt his sincerity. I never checked his phone, nor did I ever show up suddenly to inspect him, even when those trendy short videos were full of ways to test a boyfriend's true feelings. I never thought of using them on Fernando. I always believed that love doesn't need to be tested, it hides itself in every detail. I considered myself someone both slow to sense emotions and cautious with them. Yet Fernando's love was always so passionate and open. When I was 15, my family fell apart, my dad cheated, the mistress got pregnant, and after my parents divorced, neither of them wanted me. The unwanted burden. I can still remember that rainy night when my mother left. I ran behind her taxi, begging her to take me with her, but she never looked back. Even after the taillights disappeared into the night, I stubbornly kept running until I was exhausted, finally collapsing in a puddle. That was when Fernando found me, holding an umbrella over me. His thin teenage frame swayed unsteadily in the wind and rain, but he moved the umbrella step by step until it covered my head. Through my sobs, I told him I no longer had a home. I will never forget the look in Fernando's eyes, bright, as if holding a small flame that could melt ice and light up the night. Esther, you still have me. Through my soaked clothes, his burning warmth seeped into me, as if it would never fade. After my parents left, I lived alone, paying for my tuition, study materials, and living expenses by myself. By day I attended school, carefully organizing my notes and error collections, then photocopying them to sell online. My high school was a top-ranked one, and with my good grades, many people were willing to buy my notes. On top of that, after school every day I would collect empty water bottles from the classrooms, take them home, and sell them to recycling stations every so often. On weekends, I worked part-time, listening to English audio while handing out flyers, reciting math formulas while shaking bubble tea, listening to the boss's news broadcasts while washing dishes. I seized every possible moment to both earn money and study. I knew I had no way out. Studying was my only escape. In the beginning, some classmates mocked me. They called me shabby, said my dad had run off with another woman and abandoned me, leaving me as a child nobody wanted. I tried to act as though I didn't care, but how could I really not care? We were the same age, yet while they only needed to focus on their studies, I had to fight tooth and nail just to survive. But I had no time to argue, just living and studying had already drained all my strength. And yet, every time that happened, Fernando would step forward to defend me. His method was simple and direct, fighting. Whoever insulted me, he'd fight them. The worst time, he broke someone's bone and got punished. But he still turned around to comfort me. Don't listen to them. Esther, you're wonderful. You're strong. Every moment you work hard, you're shining. You just keep moving forward. I'll always be behind you, protecting you. Once, I fainted from anemia, and Fernando carried me to the nurse's office, stayed by my bed all night, and his eyes were red from staying awake. From then on, he insisted on bringing me meals every day, refusing to let me eat at the cafeteria, afraid I wouldn't accept it. He asked me to tutor him in exchange. He said he wanted to work hard so we could go to the same university. By then, Fernando's father's business had already succeeded, and his family's financial situation was far better than mine. I tried to keep my distance, but he always found ways to close it. To give me snacks, he'd treat the whole class. To collect bottles for me, he gathered all the empty water bottles from basketball games. To let me rest more, he hired people to help hand out my flyers while he lingered nearby. He carefully protected my dignity, while openly and fiercely shielding me from the storm. Between us, whenever I stepped back once, he would take 101 steps forward. Eventually, he reached me, but in the end, he still cheated. Chapter 3. Noticing I had been quiet for a long time, my senior sister knocked on the stall door in the restroom. Esther, are you okay? Snapping out of my thoughts, I wiped my face. I'm fine. I'll be out soon. When I returned to the dinner table, everyone had almost finished eating. Since we had to take the bus back to school tomorrow, there was no plan for a second round. Before leaving, I told my advisor that I was willing to go abroad on exchange and take on the overseas collaborative project. He looked at me for a moment, then asked why I had suddenly changed my mind. I thought about it. It wasn't really a change of mind, more like I suddenly realized that with one less person in my future, any choice I made would be easier. 2 weeks ago, my advisor had told me that the department had an exchange opportunity 1 year abroad, leading a collaborative project. And after returning, I could directly secure a place for graduate school without the entrance exams. At the time, I didn't immediately agree. Instead, I gathered a lot of information and prepared 2 complete plans. Back then, I had unconsciously placed Fernando in my future. I planned to find a time to discuss it with him. If he supported me going abroad, we could manage a year of long distance, 2 countries. The time difference, the vacation days we could meet within that year, I had marked them all down. If he wanted me to stay, it wasn't as if I had to go abroad. With my abilities, I could still secure graduate admission in China or take the exams directly. There are plenty of good universities here, either path would work. At that time, I always thought that as long as 2 people stayed together, any difficulty could be overcome. We had already walked through the darkest nights together. Ahead of us should have been only open roads. But I forgot, people's hearts are always wrapped in many layers. And the person you see before you may still be unreadable deep inside. Just as I was carefully mapping out the future, his heart had already drifted away. So be it. The road ahead is long, and I will walk it alone. Chapter 4. On the day of our return trip, my advisor told me he had secured me a spot to defend for the overseas exchange program and asked me to prepare well for next week's selection exam. When my senior sister heard I was considering going abroad, she teased me with a laugh. "Esther, if you go overseas, won't you be worried about your boyfriend cheating?" I smiled but didn't answer. She took my smile for confidence and sighed, talking to herself. "Forget it. That was a stupid question. You're all around perfect. Loyal as a lapdog boyfriend, I've never met a man more devoted than him. How about this, one day you have him teach a class, and I'll drag my boyfriend there to learn some gentleman's virtues." I still said nothing. The carriage was lively, and the topic quickly shifted. I looked out the window, catching the dim silhouette of myself in the blur of passing scenery. In everyone's eyes, Fernando was the perfect boyfriend, good-looking, wealthy, fit, and most importantly, never hiding his love for me in public. During our freshman military training, Fernando's name was almost a daily fixture on the school's confession wall. Many bold girls even stopped him directly to confess in front of everyone. Fed up, Fernando had a black t-shirt custom-made with 5 big characters front and back, already taken. "Don't bother." One winter in our first year, it suddenly poured while I was in class. I stood in front of the lecture building, waiting for the rain to ease, only to see Fernando approaching with an umbrella, despite the fact he was running a high fever. His temper was far from good, but with me, he never once raised his voice. The angriest he had ever been was when I went out for a tutoring job and forgot to charge my phone, leaving him unable to reach me. He ended up bringing 2 police officers to knock on my employer's door. The moment he saw me, his legs almost gave way. On the way back, I promised over and over that I'd keep my phone charged next time. I tried every way to coax him, but he still wouldn't calm down until, out of nowhere, he grabbed my hand and slapped himself twice. "If something happened to you, I'd hate myself for not reaching you sooner. I'm begging you, don't ever go missing on me again." His eyes were red, his voice low and pleading. Under the dim streetlights, he handed me nothing but the purest sincerity. I believe his love was real then, but the betrayal that came later was just as real. Sincerity, so quick to change. Chapter 5. The buzz of my phone pulled me from my drifting thoughts. I opened WeChat. It was a message from Pilar. "Senior, can we meet and talk?" I didn't reply, and I wouldn't meet her. When I was younger, every time I thought about my broken family and the fights before my parents split, I would instinctively hate the mistress. Later, I came to understand, while a mistress who willingly sinks so low is indeed detestable, the man who cheats is far more so. Wanting to keep stability while chasing excitement. In a relationship, whether you fall out of love midway or your passion simply fades, you can choose to end it with dignity and start fresh in the open. But instead, they choose to let the other person be deceived, blinded, and intruded upon. They relish having 2 women fight over them, jealous, tearing at each other, even spiraling into hysteria. And in the end, they still throw in a round of emotional manipulation. "I only went to someone else because you weren't good enough." In times like that, people's focus almost always lands on the mistress, while the man slips conveniently into the background. In this unequal game, the one who does wrong is the man, yet the one hurt and the one left to bear the shame is the woman. How laughable. Whatever Pilar's purpose for seeking me out, I don't care. I won't fight her over a man, nor will I compare myself to her. I know the road I came from, and I know the road I'm headed toward. At 15, when Esther was abandoned by her parents, she kept her head down and walked through the night until she reached the dawn. At 21, when Esther was betrayed by her lover, she still had no shortage of courage to start over. Chapter 6. The day I returned to campus, Fernando came to pick me up. As always, he brought me my favorite pastries. Even though the shop always had at least a 30-minute line, his gaze toward me was still gentle and full of affection, without a single crack to be found, as if he had never done anything to betray me. That was the first time I realized just how good an actor he could be, and how much I could endure. I thought I would cry, that I would lose control and demand answers. Did it have to end this way? But I didn't. After discovering his cheating, aside from that moment of despair and pain, I suddenly felt that nothing mattered anymore. Why he cheated, why he lied, why he hurt me, It didn't matter. I didn't need those answers. On this road called life, we meet countless passers-by. At no point should you let someone unworthy trip your steps forward. As for the paths we didn't walk together, I could walk them myself. From then on, I threw myself entirely into preparing for my defense. Other than eating and sleeping, I was in the lab almost every moment. It wasn't until the defense was over and I successfully secured the exchange spot that I realized Fernando and I hadn't spoken for several days. This was probably the longest we had ever gone without contact. In the past, even when I was busy, Fernando was always understanding. He'd quietly order takeout for me, leave WeChat messages to tell me his schedule. Silence like this was new. Just as I was thinking that, Fernando called. It was quiet on his end, except for the whistling of the wind, which made his voice sound extra clear. Esther, are you done being busy? I looked at the pitch-black night outside my window and answered softly. Almost. Can we meet? There's something I want to tell you. He said he was waiting for me at the track. I couldn't read his tone. I didn't know if he realized I already knew about his cheating. But somehow, none of that seemed important anymore. I grabbed my coat and headed out. I hadn't even reached the track when I got a message from Pilar. A photo of Fernando's back. And one sentence. He just left my place. If you don't believe me, check inside the hood of his sweatshirt. You'll find a rhinestone from my manicure. I still didn't reply, but she clearly had no intention of letting me be. Senior, do you still want a man who's been tainted? I hadn't planned to get tangled up with Pilar, but her repeated provocations were wearing my patience thin. What exactly do you want to say? This time, she sent a voice message, her tone laced with a playful laugh. Senior, why don't you meet me? I've got something interesting to tell you. Chapter 7. With my phone still in hand, I kept walking. From a distance, I saw Fernando waiting at the entrance of the track. When he saw me, he walked forward a few steps and, like always, reached for my hand. Cold? I smiled faintly and quietly pulled my hand back. Not cold. He lowered his gaze and studied me for a moment. Esther, I haven't congratulated you on getting the exchange spot yet. I froze for a second. I hadn't told him about going abroad. He must have caught my surprise, because he gave a small laugh. I overheard someone from your department mentioning it while I was playing basketball. I know you've been busy preparing for the defense, so I didn't bother you. These past few days, I've been thinking a lot, trying to adjust myself. I stayed silent, just watching him. At first, when I found out, I was a little upset and sad. I was afraid you hadn't thought about our future. But over these days, I've come to understand. I know how hard you've worked to get here. I won't stand in the way of you becoming a better version of yourself. I'll always wait for you. I looked at him. In his eyes, as he spoke, were faint ripples of light, just like the sincerity he'd shown me when we were 17. In that moment, I couldn't tell how much of it was real, and how much was false. I suddenly reached out and hugged him. He thought I was moved and hugged me back even more tightly. Esther, I won't give up on you. Never. Whatever you want to do, go for it. I'll be right behind you. While he said that, I found the rhinestone Pilar had left hidden inside his sweatshirt hood. Its sharp edges pricked my fingertip. A fine, spreading pain that seeped all the way into my heart. So a person's deep affection could be faked this well? I swallowed down the sting in my eyes and said softly, as for the answer about the future, you'll know it very soon. Before I go abroad, I have a gift for you. Chapter 8. About my departure date. I lied to Fernando. On the day I left, he was taking the IELTS exam. He said it was to prepare for the day we'd meet abroad, that if I ever decided to stay there, he would follow me overseas. Once, when I was joyfully sketching out our shared future, his heart had already wandered away, and when I was planning to leave without ever looking back, he was suddenly chasing after a future with all his might. Between us, it was always a matter of wrong timing. That day, before leaving, I went to the North Garden, where the most spiritually accurate wishing tree in City C stood. After we graduated high school, I had accepted Fernando's confession under that tree. He had tied a wishing ribbon there, writing a promise to love me forever. I remembered how tightly he had tied it, saying that even 100 years of wind and rain wouldn't loosen it. But when I went there that day, I barely touched it. and the ribbon fell into my hand. Maybe it was fate. I stared at the bold, strong handwriting, and it felt as if, through time, I could see that spirited young man again. The promise itself wasn't wrong, and the feelings in that moment were real. But we never should have made such a vow at an age when we didn't understand what forever meant. Back at school, I found a small box filled with the dozens of love letters Fernando had written to me. Since our second year of high school, Fernando had written to me on and off. Some letters were his own words. Others were excerpts from poems he had come across. He said he wanted to record every moment his heart beat for me, so that when we were old, he could tell our children about them. Back then, we weren't even together yet, but he was already talking about the distant future. I had been a little embarrassed and scolded him for talking nonsense. He had just smiled, showing the tip of one sharp canine tooth. One day it will happen, sooner or later. Esther, we'll be together, forever together. He had been so confident, so serious, that just hearing him made it impossible not to believe we might really have a future. After my family broke apart and my parents abandoned me, there was a long time when I believed I would never love anyone again. If blood ties and family could be thrown away so easily, what guarantee could love possibly offer? But clearly, Fernando was the exception. When I shut myself away, he was sincere. When I retreated, he advanced. When I was afraid, he was brave. When I was disheartened, he was passionate and bright. He always found a way to seep into my heart. I thought Fernando was different from everyone else, so I began writing back to his love letters. His letters were written without order or structure, and I replied with the same casual ease. Sometimes, I would just jot down a fleeting image or scene in my mind on the back of his letter. That process felt like slowly building a future that belonged only to us. Dozens of letters later, when the backs were filled, I took out new stationery and began again. I thought, on our wedding day, I'd give them to Fernando, and he'd be utterly surprised. Unfortunately, there will be no one day for us anymore. Those empty dreams of the future, and every single moment that once moved my heart, I returned them to him all at once. From now on, we will have nothing to do with each other. Chapter 9. When Fernando walked out after finishing his exam, he suddenly missed Esther. He thought it was simply reluctance, after all. She was supposed to leave the country tomorrow. He called her immediately, only to hear the phone turned off prompt. A wave of unease hit him without reason. They had promised each other never to lose contact again. Fernando had a bad premonition. Though he couldn't tell where it came from, he rushed back to campus as fast as he could. At the entrance of Esther's dorm building, he ran into her roommates. They looked at him strangely. She left for her flight today, didn't you know? In that instant, Fernando almost lost his footing. Esther had lied to him. She had left on her own. As for why, there could only be one reason. She knew. She knew about his betrayal, about his pretended affection. That suspicion was confirmed when he received the small box. Inside was the red ribbon that had once carried his 17-year-old promise, meant to hang on the wishing tree, now cut into tiny pieces. Lying silently in the box, beneath the fragments were the love letters he had once written to her. On the cover, in bold, lively handwriting, to the forever shining classmate Esther. At 17, Esther had accepted his heart. At 20, she returned every piece of it. So decisive. Esther truly didn't want him anymore. That conclusion hurt Fernando so much it felt like his chest was caving in. His vision went dark, and the box slipped from his hands, scattering the ribbon pieces and letters across the ground. Fernando dropped to his knees, hastily scooping everything back into the box before hurrying to the airport. He couldn't maintain an ounce of composure or dignity. He urged the driver like a madman to go faster. Faster still, the driver, thinking he was unhinged, even called the police. He still didn't make it in time. Fernando fell seriously ill, running a fever for 3 days straight. The moment he woke up, he called Pilar. In the background, there was the sound of waves crashing against rocks, making her tones sound especially light. I'm the one who told her. So what? I wanted her to know you're nothing but a fucking scumbag. Cheating once doesn't mean it's not cheating. Stop acting like some devoted lover. Who the hell do you think you are? Pilar cursed him out and then hung up. At that moment, she was in Sonia, wrapped in the arms of a male model, enjoying the sea breeze. There were two things Pilar had lied to Esther about. First, she wasn't a student at City C University, she was just a hostess at a club. Second, Fernando's involvement with her had been nothing more than a one-night stand. Pilar had seen Fernando many times before. He would always come to the club with a group of rich young men. They all had girlfriends, and they all liked to order models. Only Fernando, after drinking a bit, would always leave early. Everyone called him a wife slave. He didn't mind, he even looked proud of it. Pilar remembered him, nicknaming him the devoted boy. One night, Fernando came again with his usual crowd. But it was obvious something was off. He seemed irritable, checking his phone constantly. She heard he'd had a fight with his girlfriend. One of his friends told him not to hang himself on one tree, trying to persuade him with the twisted logic that a little fun on the side wouldn't be discovered. Fernando lost his temper but kept drinking. Later, when the group got rowdy, someone shoved Pilar into Fernando's arms. He'd had quite a bit to drink, and in that hazy moment, he pressed his lips to hers. She pushed him away, thinking he was drunk, but that night, Fernando took her to a hotel upstairs. That was when Pilar realized he wasn't drunk. He knew exactly what he was doing. Inwardly, Pilar scoffed. There were no such things as devoted boys, only male animals thinking with their lower halves. But she didn't refuse. The manager had already given her an ultimatum. If she didn't start drinking with clients, she'd lose the right to work. Fernando was handsome, generous. As her first client, it wasn't a bad deal. Afterward, Fernando gave her a huge hush payment and told her to keep her mouth shut. Pilar smiled sweetly and said, "Thank you, sugar daddy," while rolling her eyes in her heart. After that night, Fernando never sought her out again, and never sought out anyone else either. It was as if he'd gone back to being the devoted boy. But Pilar knew, once a man is tainted, he's tainted forever. By chance, Pilar ran into Fernando at the supermarket and saw his girlfriend too. She recognized that girl. Half a year ago, Pilar had gone out with a fever to buy medicine, only to twist her ankle and get cornered in an alley by a drunk thug. That girl happened to pass by, picked up a brick, and charged right at him. She looked skinny, but she had surprising strength, managing to carry Pilar on her back to the clinic. It was a small thing, one Pilar guessed the girl had long forgotten, so she didn't recognize Pilar. But Pilar remembered her. That day, when she went home, Pilar found a way to add her on WeChat, pretending to be a junior from Fernando's campus club. She didn't even know why she did it, so after adding her, she didn't reach out for a long time. Later, Pilar decided to quit her job. She had a dream to open a little shop by the sea, and she'd saved enough to make it happen. Before leaving, she dug up the secretly recorded video from the night she'd slept with Fernando, planning to blackmail him for one last payout before disappearing. But just before sending it, she changed her mind. On her last day at the club, she plopped herself into Fernando's lap, wrapped her arms around him, and kissed him wildly, making sure someone was filming. Fernando quickly shoved her away, frowning in anger like some defiled, virtuous man. Pilar left with a laugh, then sent the video straight to Esther, playing the role of a mistress trying to provoke her. Along with the real kissing video, Pilar compiled a folder. Only one clip was real. The rest were AI deepfakes with his face swapped in. As for whether Esther would believe it, Pilar wasn't worried at all. When people are heartbroken, they don't turn into Sherlock Holmes, especially when the first thing they see is the truth. Her reason for doing all this was simple. In her eyes, cheating once or cheating 100 times was no different, but she wanted Esther to get angry and leave Fernando. She thought Fernando didn't deserve Esther. What she didn't expect was that Esther had no reaction at all. She simply ignored her. When Pilar ran out of ammunition, she tried to arrange a meeting, but Esther never replied. Pilar didn't bother pushing it. Before leaving for good, she sent the video to Fernando to squeeze more money out of him. That day, when Fernando came to take her phone and confirm she had no backups, she had a sudden idea. She leaned in to hug him again, and while doing so, pried off one of the rhinestones from her manicure, slipping it into his hoodie. She bet that Fernando would go straight to Esther. Men like him always did. After doing something wrong, they'd try to make up for it, especially when they really liked the woman they'd wronged. And Fernando loved Esther. He regretted it so much it probably ate him alive. But what did that matter? Betrayal was betrayal. Once or countless times, there was no difference. After Fernando left, Pilar waited a while before making one last attempt to contact Esther. But Esther didn't want to see her at all. No insults. No anger, just one line. Don't involve me in your mess anymore. Then she blocked her. Later, Pilar heard Esther was preparing to study abroad. She thought about it and guessed Esther would dump Fernando. After all, a woman who could pick up a brick and smash a drunk harasser would never swallow this kind of humiliation. Poor Fernando, still thinking Esther didn't know. Still dreaming of going abroad with her. Someone as exceptional as Esther, miss her once. And you miss her forever. If you don't cherish her, that's your loss. When you truly love someone, you never gamble with that love. In this world, cheating only comes in two quantities, 0 times, or countless times. Pilar set her phone down and went back to sunbathing. She felt no shame for her lack of decency. She had been born in the mud, a 3-nothings person with no manners, no morals, no conscience. The only thing she saw in this world was money. Chapter 10. Before the plane even took off, I had already turned off my phone. There was no important message I needed to see. After so many busy days, my mind and body were both exhausted. I leaned back in my seat, closed my eyes, and before I knew it, I had fallen asleep. In a haze, I dreamed of the winter break of our second year in high school. Back then, I refused to beg my parents to take me back. I just quietly worked part-time jobs to save money. I worked 3 shifts a day, mornings at a convenience store as a cashier, afternoons at a bubble tea shop, and evenings tutoring. The tutoring location wasn't that far, but winter nights fell early. By the time I went home, the sky was already pitch black. Fernando didn't feel at ease, so every day he would wait for me at the tutoring place. There was a narrow alley there, dimly lit, and every time the streetlight would stretch a shadow long, I could spot him from far away, waiting for me. We would take the bus together, quietly listening to music. That half-hour ride was the most relaxing moment of my day. Fernando no longer lived in the neighborhood, but he still insisted on walking me home before heading to his own place. One day, as soon as I stepped into my apartment, a hand clamped over my mouth. Someone had hidden inside beforehand. I struggled desperately, but the strength of a grown man was too much. I was dragged to my bed, my arms and legs pinned down. I tried to bite him, but he slapped me twice so hard my head went dizzy. I had worked all day, my whole body weak, but I still fought with everything I had. In the struggle, my phone was thrown aside, and I saw the screen light up. It was Fernando calling. I clawed toward it, but was dragged back. My clothes were halfway torn when Fernando suddenly returned. He almost single-handedly yanked the man off me and threw him across the room. Rolling on the floor with the attacker were 2 roasted corns he had just bought. 17-year-old Fernando had grown tall and strong. Standing in front of me, he felt like a barrier against all the darkness. He wrapped me in his coat, hands trembling, eyes red. Even though it wasn't his fault, he kept saying he was sorry. From then on, Fernando insisted my phone always be reachable. Every night when he walked me home, he would go inside first to check every corner, making sure there was nowhere for anyone to hide. Then tell me to lock the door, and still, he'd stand outside for a while before leaving. Rain or wind, it was always like this. Back then, even the bone-chilling winter wind couldn't scatter the warmth in his eyes, like a flame. My only source of heat, as if it would never go out. The day I received my university admission letter, Fernando came with a bouquet of flowers to confess. For someone usually so carefree, his hands were shaking as he held them, and he stumbled through the same sentence 3 times. His eyes were so bright, like a sky full of stars, and every single one spelled Esther. Esther. Just like now, keep moving forward. Don't look back. All the best scenery in life is ahead. I'll always be right behind you. Chapter 11. When I woke up, my face was wet. The crisp voice of that boy seemed still to linger in my ears. I picked up my luggage and headed to board. Beside me, someone accidentally tugged their earphones loose, letting music spill softly into the air. When the autumn wind rises, it is the hometown song of the clouds. For the sake of reunion, we travel thousands of miles. It's destined, someone will always be missing from the future. But at least, I once loved you deeply. Extra, male leads POV. When Fernando was 29, he was diagnosed with late-stage liver cancer. The doctor told him he didn't have much time left if he had any unfinished wishes. He'd better hurry to fulfill them. That day, Fernando sat in his bedroom all night. It was nearly dawn when he finally stood, went to the other side of the bed, and took out a box from the nightstand. It was the box Esther had sent to him through someone else when she left the country years ago. Inside, the wishing ribbon that had been cut into pieces had been painstakingly pieced back together. Some edges were missing, but the words were still clear. Fernando loves Esther. For all lifetimes. The handwriting was steady and fluid, just as it had been when he wrote it, with such certainty, such unwavering conviction. But he had failed to keep that promise. He'd let himself be dazzled by the fleeting pleasures of the world, stepping into an abyss for the sake of momentary thrill. He was the one who had pushed Esther away with his own hands. He knew full well how many obstacles Esther had overcome to be with him, yet he hadn't cherished it. For 8 years, every single moment, he had lived in regret, in countless recollections. He'd wished he could go back to that night and stab himself twice. How could he have clung to such reckless hope? How could he have dared to take such a gamble? Esther was such a clear-headed, proud person. Back when her parents abandoned her, she would rather survive on half a bun than ever turn back to beg them. How could she ever forgive a cheating man? He'd forgotten. Esther never looked back. Fernando's eyes stung as he took out the envelopes from the box, opening them one by one. Before he got the box, he had never known, on the back of every love letter he had sent, she had written a reply. Those letters had been meant for their wedding day, but the day he received them was the day she left him. Esther didn't want him anymore. Looking at the graceful handwriting on the back, he could picture how she must have looked while writing them, her brows soft, her lips curved in a faint smile. She had seriously planned a future with him, writing out her dreams line by line. From the layout of their house, the color of the curtains, the height of the bookshelves, to the cushions for the bay window, even the name of the cat. She had thought of it all in such detail that he could almost see it, the picture so beautiful it felt like a dream. She had once wanted so badly to have a future with him, and he had been the one who didn't value it. They say those who betray true love must swallow 10,000 needles, so his retribution had simply come early. Before sunrise, Fernando sent Esther an email, telling her he was terminally ill and asking if she would see him one last time. Ever since she had gone abroad 8 years ago, she'd never returned. Originally, she was supposed to come back for graduate school, but her outstanding work on a project had landed her an opportunity to stay overseas. Esther was always clear-minded. She always knew what she wanted, always moving forward, and he had stayed forever in the past. In that day 8 years ago when she left, that night, Fernando received her reply. She said she would return in 2 days. At that moment, Fernando felt a rush of joy. She was still willing to see him. On the day he went to meet her at the airport, he spent a long time choosing his clothes and fixing his hair again and again, but his increasingly thin frame couldn't hide his sickly state. Standing in the wind that day, he felt as if he'd gone back to that winter break in their second year of high school, when he would wait at the mouth of the alley every night for Esther to finish tutoring so they could walk home together. It had been the same biting wind then. He would lean against the wall, writing her love letters on his phone, his chest burning hot. No amount of cold could scatter that fire in him. As he was lost in thought, Esther appeared. 8 years had passed. She was slimmer now, her hair curled, wearing light makeup, her expression a little tired, yet still as radiant as ever. Finally, he spoke the words. "It's been a long time." On the way back to the hotel, Esther asked about his illness, encouraging him to cooperate with treatment and stay positive. Fernando knew he was already at the end of his strength, but her words still had a calming effect. He smiled and agreed. Esther's leave wasn't long. She could only stay for 3 days. But for Fernando, that was enough. These 3 days felt like a gift from heaven. They spent them like old friends reunited after years apart, returning to their university, eating local specialties, walking through streets that had since been renovated. 8 years was enough to overturn most of a city's old look. Walking the roads they had once known, they could no longer find even a trace of the past. Time had changed everything. Fernando could feel it in his bones. The next day, they went together to visit their high school math teacher, a gentle woman who had helped Esther a great deal. Back in school, she had often given Esther brand new textbooks, and sometimes cooked meat dishes for her to take home. Esther remembered all of it, and had brought her a neck and shoulder massager from abroad. When they left, the teacher gave them many blessings, assuming they were still together. Fernando was the first to thank her. Esther said nothing. Outside the teacher's home, Fernando called out to Esther. He wanted to ask if he had never lost his mind, never made that mistake. Would they be married now? Would they have the light green curtains she'd imagined, and a little cat named Star? But before he could ask, Esther's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID, apologized, and stepped aside to answer. When she returned, there was an apologetic look on her face. I might have to leave tomorrow. My boyfriend fell and broke his leg on the stairs. I need to check on him. In that moment, Fernando couldn't name the feeling in his chest, only that it ached with a dull, bitter weight. He didn't ask the question he'd been holding. Instead, he asked, Esther, do you still hate me? Esther paused, then smiled. Fernando, I never hated you. In love, being right or wrong doesn't erase the warmth and strength you once gave me. The sadness and pain back then were real, but so many years have passed. And when I look back now, I'm still grateful to you. Grateful for the umbrella you once held over me. Grateful that during my insecure and sensitive youth, you stood behind me with such determination and fearlessness. Grateful that you healed me so many times when life had battered me into a mess. Grateful you walked such a long way with me. 17-year-old Fernando would always be a beam of light in Esther's life, shining in her darkest nights, illuminating her lonely star. Fernando's eyes reddened as he listened to her speak, each word clear and open-hearted. Esther hadn't changed. She had always been willing to remember kindness. When Esther left, she asked Fernando for his medical records, saying she would check with some doctor friends abroad. Standing at the airport, with the breeze stirring her loose hair, her expression was gentle. Fernando, get good treatment, you'll be fine. Even after she'd been hurt so deeply and left so decisively, her last words to him were still encouragement. After she returned overseas, she sent Fernando a contact. From then on, all the doctor recommendations and hospital arrangements went through that person. Esther herself never interfered again. Later, Fernando learned that man was her boyfriend. Whether it was just his imagination or not, Fernando felt the man's social media posts became unusually frequent after they connected, every single one featuring Esther. Her putting on makeup in the morning, curled up on the sofa reading, playfully wrestling with the cat, accepting his marriage proposal. Fernando knew it was a silent display of pride and possession. Men understood men. Fernando himself had done the same before. He'd always known how dazzling Esther was. When they were together, every moment with her made him want to announce it to the whole world. That was why, even with a 39-degree fever, he still insisted on bringing her an umbrella, or why he'd feel a rush of joy walking her out of a crowd with his arm around her. Such a brilliant star. Once he lost her, there would always be others trying to claim her. But he was glad now, glad she was happy. Fernando was eventually admitted to the hospital. His bodily functions declined, his life slipping away day by day. In his last days, Fernando held that box close, reading through the letters inside over and over. He let himself sink into the pictures Esther had painted, trying to build a dream world for himself. 2 months later, Esther received the obituary notice of Fernando's death. That day, she stood at the window for a long time until someone draped a coat over her shoulders. That night, Esther dreamed of 17-year-old Fernando. She was coming out of her employer's home after tutoring, and there he was, standing at the mouth of the alley. The yellow streetlight stretched his shadow long. When she got closer, Fernando pulled a lollipop from his pocket. He smiled, eyes curving into crescents, the tip of one sharp canine tooth showing. He reached out and gently ruffled her hair. Esther, you worked hard today. Story 2. Reborn. Joel once again took my urban return quota as a sent-down youth and gave it to Ava. I knew I would have to wait another 3 years to return to the city. In my past life, I was like this, timid, overly kind, and soft-hearted. A single mistake led to a lifetime of regrets, harming both myself and my family. But this time, I have the upper hand. Life has just begun. Unlike the last time, Joel actually came from the city to see me. That day, the production team held a rare gathering, serving mutton dumplings, born by the seaside. I had grown up eating seafood and had never tried mutton before. I forced myself to eat a few dumplings. But the moment I stepped outside and felt the breeze, the strong smell rushed straight to my head. I couldn't hold back any longer. Just as I was about to vomit, Joel came to find me, and I ended up throwing up all over him. To my surprise, he didn't get angry. His face was full of concern, and guilt practically consumed him. But that wasn't the end of it. The next day, during a production team meeting, I was accused of wasting food and publicly criticized. My position as a primary school teacher was even revoked. Seeing how miserable I looked, Joel finally lowered his proud head. He persistently apologized to me, even knocking on my window at night. But unlike in my past life, I didn't forgive him this time. I opened the door and snapped viciously. Knock, 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 knock your damn head. Did someone in your family die or what? If I'm destined to be entangled with him in this life, then I choose to be a shrew. If kindness can't blossom, let it grow thorns. Chapter 1. After the criticism meeting in the morning, Joel used his influence in the afternoon to get me reinstated as a primary school teacher. In reality, the team only wanted to give me a warning. They never truly intended to remove me. After all, I was the only teacher in the entire school, responsible for teaching dozens of children. Joel and I walked out of the team's shabby office together. After an exhausting day, I just wanted to head back to my place and rest. Joel grabbed my arm abruptly. Lisa, don't you have anything to say? I squinted, glancing sideways at him with a sharp gaze. Shouldn't you be the one with something to say? He was momentarily speechless. He wasn't used to my sharpness. After all, I had always been gentle and accommodating, putting him first in everything. In my past life, when I found out he had taken my city return quota and given it to someone else, I wrote him a furious letter. In response, he simply submitted a marriage application to the organization, promising that as soon as I returned to the city, he would marry me. When I saw the bold red stamp on the application, I forgot all my anger. All the wrongs he had done were wiped clean, and so, I obediently stayed in the countryside for another 3 years. In my past life, because I made a fuss, he didn't come to see me. Submitting the marriage application was merely a formality to fulfill the engagement we already had. I forgave him easily, but in this life, it wouldn't be that simple. He stared at me in shock, scrutinizing me repeatedly with a puzzled expression. Are you angry? I furrowed my brow, examining him in return, as though he were a stranger, scrutinizing him from head to toe. My gaze made him visibly uncomfortable. So, he did know how to feel guilty. I let out a cold laugh, clenching my teeth. I'd like to ask you something. The city return quota was earned through my hard work. What right did you have to give it to someone else? What did you take in exchange? Hearing this, his face went pale. He instinctively stepped back 2 paces, stumbling as he retreated. I pressed further, seizing the advantage. If you want to seek benefits for yourself, I don't care, but you can't use me to do it. This quota was earned through my own hard work. It was granted to me by the organization. What right do you have to trade what's mine for your gain? His face turned even paler, panic flashing across his features. It's not like that. Lisa, listen to me. It was Paul who asked me. He said his girlfriend wasn't in good health and wanted to return to the city to recover. But she didn't have the opportunity. Since Ava is in the same commune as you, I decided to give the quota to her. I know you've been wronged. As soon as you return to the city, we'll get married immediately, okay? He looked at me cautiously, his gaze filled with a rare attempt to please me. Ah, of course. Although we were deeply in love and our families had arranged our engagement, it was still uncommon for him to lower himself like this to coax me. After all, he was the aloof flower from the courtyard compound. No, it's not okay. I shook off his grip on my arm. You say Ava is Paul's girlfriend. Who can prove it? And who can prove that there's nothing improper going on between the two of you? He froze, utterly stunned. In his shock, he forgot how to respond. I won't let this slide. I'll report it to the organization. I tossed the words coldly and walked away briskly. Of course, I knew Joel's capabilities. The matter of the quota being reassigned was already irreversible. What I said was merely a feint. I actually had other plans. I would find a way to seek justice for myself. My parents were still waiting for me back home. In my previous life, my grandmother passed away a year later, and I didn't make it back in time to see her one last time. She had raised me single-handedly, and I was closer to her than to my own parents. In my grief, I missed Joel even more. I wrote him a letter, hoping he would come to comfort me, but his reply came much later, simply saying he was too busy to leave and urging me to take care of myself. So, expecting someone else to save you is foolish in itself, and foolish things like that, I did far too many in my past life. Chapter 2. In my past life, I didn't return home until 3 years later. By then, the college entrance exams, Gaokao, had already resumed for 2 sessions. Living in the countryside, I couldn't access good review materials. I planned to work hard and give it my all once I returned to the city. But to my surprise, the 3rd round of exams was far harder than the previous 2. Ill-prepared, I failed. Around that time, Joel's family sent a matchmaker to propose marriage. Both families agreed, and I ended up marrying him. I originally intended to review for another year and try again, but Joel's mother fell ill and needed care. I had no choice but to split my time between studying and looking after her. My father had once saved Joel's father during a flood relief operation, and our families were deeply connected. Joel's mother had even invited me to stay at their house for a few months. She was kind and warm back then. Later, she noticed that Joel liked me, so she sent me back home. She handled it gracefully, telling my parents, "It's wonderful that the 2 kids have feelings for each other, but Joel is about to take the college entrance exam, and Lisa is also at the age for her studies. Why don't we arrange the engagement for now?" However, after I became her daughter-in-law, it was as if a natural enmity between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law emerged, and she began to torment me. Even when I did my best to care for her, and despite the presence of professional caregivers, she still found fault with me and complained about me to Joel. Under the pressure, I had to devote more of my energy to her care. As a result, my 2nd attempt at the Gaokao also ended in failure. I still wanted to take the exam a 3rd time, but that year, I became pregnant, and my due date coincided with the exam month. After being worn down by life, I finally gave up on my studies and embarked on a path where one misstep led to another. After giving birth to my 1st child, I soon had a 2nd. My relationship with my mother-in-law deteriorated further, and my life became a chaotic mess. The once passionate love Joel and I shared slowly eroded over time. Meanwhile, when I failed my 2nd Gaokao attempt, Ava had already graduated from university. Paul went abroad to study, and before he left, he entrusted Ava to Joel's care. By that time, Ava was already successful. She had become a university lecturer, admired by everyone. Joel also advanced steadily in his career. As Paul stayed abroad for longer periods, Ava and Joel grew closer. They talked about politics, economics, and interpersonal relationships. They listened to Cantonese pop songs together, watched plays and movies together, and even attended ballroom dances. Both of them advanced rapidly in life, eventually meeting at the top. Meanwhile, I was weighed down by my family responsibilities, slowly boiling like a frog in warm water, gradually turning a blind eye to everything. It wasn't until Paul returned from abroad and discovered that the money he had sent Ava had all been lost in stock trading that the illusion shattered. He was furious and gave Ava a severe beating. Joel tried to have a heart-to-heart with Paul, but the conversation escalated into a fight. At the end of it, Paul spat out a mouthful of blood, looked at Joel with utter disdain, and said, "A friend's wife is off limits. Joel, you've outdone yourself. Truly, you can never fully know a person." From that moment on, Paul and Ava broke up for good. Even though Ava and Joel no longer had any reason to meet, they kept in touch. Paul, unwilling to let it go, spread rumors everywhere, calling them shameless scum. He even went to Ava's house to cause trouble, demanding his money back. Later, without my knowledge, Joel took money from our family savings to help Ava pay Paul back. It wasn't a small amount, most of it was mine. While Joel's salary was high, Paul's earnings abroad were an astronomical sum at the time. The two were simply not comparable. At that time, I was working as a factory laborer. Coincidentally, the glass factory I worked at went public, and I owned internal employee shares. That windfall made me wealthy, But that money was used by Joel to help Ava. I didn't discover this until my mother fell seriously ill and needed money for treatment. It was then I realized that our savings had long been emptied. My mother couldn't receive treatment in Beijing and passed away shortly after. My younger brother, desperate to raise funds for her medical expenses, resorted to something illegal and was punished by the law. My father, enraged by my actions, suffered a stroke, leaving him paralyzed and speechless. I wandered the streets in a daze, lost and aimless, until I finally collapsed on the side of the road. When I woke up, I had returned to 10 years ago. I had once made one wrong step, which led to many more. I had grieved deeply, wallowed in self-pity, and bitterly regretted marrying Joel. But now, I know my country has a brighter future ahead, and so do I. This time, I don't care about the things I once missed out on. I have better plans now. Even university is just a stepping stone for me. Chapter 3. Joel caught up with me again and grabbed my arm. If you're angry, vent it all out. You can hit me like you did last night. I stared at him coldly, and the hatred I couldn't suppress flickered in my gaze. Joel's pupils dilated dramatically as he looked at me in disbelief. Lisa, I didn't know you'd be this mad. If I had known, I wouldn't have agreed to Paul's request. I tilted my head and clenched my teeth. I don't care about anyone else. You're going to send me back to the city right now. Joel lowered his head in defeat. I've already interfered in personnel matters once. I can't do it again. See? I knew he would say that. It wasn't that he couldn't do it, he just wasn't willing to pay the price. If he overstepped again, the organization would criticize him, and it might hurt his career prospects. He couldn't face the mocking look in my eyes. Covering his face with his hand, he avoided my gaze. When he looked at me again, his expression was filled with sorrow. I promise you, I'll find an opportunity to make it right. I shook off his hand, gave him a cold glance, and walked away decisively, as if letting me hit him a few times would make this matter go away. How naive. Joel had come to see me last night. By the time he arrived, it was late, and we'd already finished dinner. The production team still hosted him, knowing it was a matter of politeness, so the dinner dragged on longer than usual. When he came to find me, I was already in bed. He knocked loudly on my door, bang, 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 the sound cutting through the quiet night. Afraid of disturbing others, I had no choice but to get up. There was no electricity in the village, so I lit a candle by the faint moonlight. The shadows on the wall magnified, looking monstrous. The night was cold. I hastily threw on some clothes, cursing under my breath. When I opened the door, Joel was waiting anxiously outside, his face as handsome and composed as ever. The desolate and dilapidated village behind him only made his refined demeanor stand out more. When enemies meet, their eyes burn with rage. Without caring whether the neighbors could hear, I unleashed a tirade. Bang, 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 what are you knocking for? Did someone in your family die? Joel staggered back a few steps, confronted by my storm of anger. He lost all momentum and didn't dare retort. He gritted his teeth, grabbed me, and pulled me aside. If others hear, it'll look bad. Under the old locust tree, where the moonlight couldn't reach, he spoke cautiously. Did you write to your family? Why didn't you tell me if you were upset? I rolled my eyes, recalling the events of my previous life. What? Did he think I'd write to him again in this life and wait for him to submit another marriage application? My plans are naturally something I'll inform my family about, I replied icily. As for you, I wouldn't dare lean on you. I don't want to benefit from your influence or suffer because of you. Consider our engagement void. His eyes flickered with shock, and I saw the faint glimmer of unshed tears. Don't say things out of anger. I thought that being a primary school teacher here, your situation was much better than Ava's. That's why I helped Paul. Stop spouting nonsense, I snapped angrily. I don't care who you help, but you had no right to take what's mine and give it to someone else. Even if we were married, what's mine would still be mine. You're shameless to think otherwise. Even in the dim light, I could see how utterly embarrassed he was. I continued. I know exactly what kind of person Ava is. Better than you. We all came from the city, and none of us were used to the labor intensity here at first. But we stuck it out. Only her, always faking sick every few days. You might be blind to it, but the masses see it clearly. The organization left her here for a reason. But you? You're nothing but a fool with a pretty face. His chest heaved with anger, rising and falling. It took him a long time to calm himself. Finally, he spoke carefully. If you're really that angry, just hit me. I laughed. I had been wanting to do that for a long time. And so, I swung my hands, slapping him several times across the face. Under his shocked gaze, I turned and walked away. What a half-hearted suggestion. If I hit him with my bare hands, people might think I was just playfully sulking, indulging in some kind of romantic quarrel. But I couldn't exactly pick up a farming tool and attack him. Either. If I seriously injured him, his hypocritical and manipulative mother would never let me off the hook. But no matter, it's always most satisfying to slap someone across the face when the power dynamic is uneven. As the saying goes, don't slap someone in the face. This was only the beginning. I'd already prepared a feast, just waiting for him to take a seat. Chapter 4. Before Joel left, he wanted to see me one last time. At that moment, I was teaching in the classroom. Outside the window, I caught sight of his hasty figure. I put down my book and went out to meet him. He hadn't expected me to leave my work to see him, and his face lit up with joy. The first thing I said was, "Do you have any money on you? I lost my salary this month and can't find it." He quickly handed over all the money he had on him. I noticed a belt in his luggage and casually took that too. His smile widened. He must have thought I'd forgiven him. "I don't have much cash now, but I'll send you more as soon as I get back." Seeing that I neither refused nor argued, he went further. "I've saved up quite a bit. I was planning to give it to you when we got married. But since you need it now, I'll hand it over." I glanced at him coldly, then turned and left. Inwardly, I sneered. What a pathetic man. This time, I hadn't written to him, crying or complaining. Instead, I had written to my family. My parents likely went to his family, which is why he came to see me. The pressure from his family and the judgment of society no longer allowed him to look down on me, casually tossing a marriage application my way to placate me. In this rebirth, I understood one thing: the weaker position of a wife is self-inflicted, and the primary cause is a lack of ruthlessness. In my past life, I watched a TV drama called Yearning, where there was a character named Luna. Watching her, I couldn't help but think of myself, gentle, agreeable, always compromising in the face of hardship, sacrificing herself to make things easier for others. Suddenly, it all seemed so pointless. So in this life, I will pursue my desires boldly, even if it means becoming a shrew. So be it. Chapter 5. Of course, I didn't actually lose my salary. The reason I asked Joel for money was because I needed to make a trip back to the city, and I needed someone to cover the travel expenses. I went to the production team leader to request leave, telling him that my father was ill and I needed to visit him. I also handed him the men's belt I had taken from Joel. He accepted it nervously and immediately approved a long leave for me. I returned to Hiiii City, slipping back home without anyone noticing. I spent some quality time with my family. After that, I wrote a detailed statement with my left hand, explaining exactly how my city return quota had been switched. Then, I sought out Joel's professional rival and handed the statement over to him. As someone who had lived this life before, I knew Joel's circumstances inside out, including where his rival lived. That evening, I intercepted the man, pulling up my scarf to conceal my face. I simply said, "Take a look at this. Decide for yourself if it's real. Use it however you want. The person involved will cooperate." With that, I walked away, not giving him any chance to ask further questions. This issue was clear-cut. It only needed someone willing to act on it. Before I even returned to the countryside, word spread that Joel was in trouble. His private manipulation of the sent-down youth city return quota had been fully exposed. Joel was summoned to a meeting by the organization and forced to make a public self-criticism. I heard it was the first time he had ever stumbled in his life. On stage, as he held his speech for the self-criticism, his hands trembled violently. The spotless, pristine life he had enjoyed was now tainted, and he became a laughingstock among his political rivals. Meanwhile, I quietly returned to the village, waiting for further news. A work group came from the city, half for inspection and half to verify my case of the swapped quota. Both the commune and the production team spoke on my behalf. and I finally secured my return to the city. I had changed my destiny and taken a step in the right direction. But after returning to the city, I discovered that Ava had also taken advantage of this opportunity to visit the hospital. As it turned out, she was diagnosed with a legitimate health issue and ended up staying in the city too. It was as if fate continued to turn on its predetermined wheels. Chapter 6. Still, things were different. For instance, since I returned to the city early, the opportunity to work at the cardboard factory was given to me. My younger brother couldn't find a job for the time being. I originally planned to wait for the college entrance exam, Gaokao, to be reinstated a few months later, so I could quickly buy review materials. The job at the cardboard factory was easy, allowing me to work and study at the same time. As for my brother, I planned to formally annul the engagement with Joel's family and then leverage the favor to have Joel's father help my brother find a job. That was the plan. But things didn't go as expected. The workshop supervisor at the cardboard factory began bringing me meals regularly. Apparently, he had a relative working at the supply and marketing cooperative, giving him access to premium pork belly. He packed the meals in lunch boxes, steamed them in the cafeteria's large steamer, and then happily handed them to me. After a few times, it became obvious, not just to me, but to everyone around us, what his intentions were. In that era, under such circumstances, it was almost a given that I would become his wife. But I had my own path to follow. Yet, I couldn't seem to shake him off. Just then, Joel's family sent someone to formally discuss our engagement. Chapter 7. I thought about it for a long time before finally agreeing to marry Joel. At least it was an environment I was familiar with. I could foresee many things and take control of my own destiny. What I had done to secure my return to the city was proof of that. I didn't need to avoid him, nor did I fear him. This way, my brother could smoothly secure a job. Just like in the previous life, the cardboard factory would eventually be privatized, and my brother would become a private business owner. If it hadn't been for my mother's medical expenses in my past life, he would have had a bright future. The wedding date was set for 3 months later. During that time, Joel came to see me a few times, but I deliberately avoided him. In the end, he visited late one night, cornering me at home. With my parents present, we met in my room. He was still as handsome as ever, though he now lacked some of his former confidence. No doubt, he'd had a rough time lately. There was a trace of grievance on his face as he handed me an envelope containing about 1,000 yuan. I tried to refuse, but he stubbornly held his position, insisting I take it. His eyes were red, and he lowered his head slightly to avoid looking at me. I know you're still angry. I know I was wrong. I promised last time to hand over my savings, and I brought it to you this time. I withdrew it from the bank. You can deposit it into your own account. I felt a slight stir in my heart. In my past life, my mother developed an occupational disease from working in the factory. Her lack of awareness about self-protection made things worse over time. This time, I planned to use this money to set her up with a small business after the reform and opening up policies were implemented. Wouldn't that be perfect? Narrowing my eyes slightly, I gave Joel a faint smile and said, "You've kept your word. That's commendable. It salvages your character a little." I started with some praise, lifting him up high so he'd be stuck in the role of a good man and be more willing to accept my next request. I neither accepted nor rejected the money but continued with the conversation. "Is this a one-time payment, or are you handing over your salary from now on?" He froze, staring at me in surprise. This pampered young master, who had never wanted for anything, clearly didn't understand what I was getting at. "No problem," I elaborated. "If you're truly sincere, you'll hand over your salary from now on. I'll give you pocket money, and we'll live our lives properly. If you're not sincere, then take this money back. I don't care for it." He finally understood and hurriedly said, "Of course, I'll give you my salary in the future." "Good," I replied casually. Among the famously formidable wives around here, who didn't hold absolute control over household finances, with this arrangement, let's see how Ava tries to take advantage of me now. After all, I still had a score to settle with her. Joel seemed to think this concession would win my favor and let out a small sigh of relief. Chapter 8. The wedding was quite the spectacle. While most families hosted banquets at home, Joel's family chose to hold it at a hotel. The venue was packed with guests, nearly all friends and relatives were in attendance. I handled everything with grace and composure, even earning a rare look of approval from Joel's mother. But I couldn't help myself from scanning the crowd for one particular person. And there they were, fate's twisted sense of humor at play again. As Joel and I moved from table to table, offering toasts, Joel lit cigarettes for the men while I handed out wedding candies to the women. Eventually, we arrived at Paul's table. Paul stood up with Ava by his side. Paul was the first to speak, his tone full of guilt. "I'm sorry, brother, for causing you so much trouble." "It's nothing," Joel said magnanimously, patting him on the shoulder. Paul then turned to me. My face, once smiling, went cold and expressionless. Paul grew even more uneasy, stammering, "I'm so sorry, sister-in-law. I had no idea things would turn out like this. If I'd known, I wouldn't have dared, not even if my life depended on it." Joel looked at me expectantly, hoping I would say something conciliatory, but I was waiting for her. Sure enough, Ava stood there, just like in my past life, exuding a delicate, frail elegance. She was the picture of poetic sorrow, like a modern-day Lin Dayu or Shishir. I shot her a glance, sharp as an ice pick. I hadn't forgotten how, in my past life, Joel had used our family's money to pay off her debts. When I went to her to ask for the money back, explaining that my mother desperately needed it for life-saving treatment, she looked at me indifferently, with a hint of disdain, as if to say, "Go ask Joel if you dare." She hadn't said a word, but one of her friends had spoken for her. "She doesn't have money. Take her life if you want." As I stumbled away in defeat, I heard Ava mutter to her friend, loud enough for me to hear, "The saddest thing for a woman is not being able to control her husband. What a snake in disguise." Today, facing her again, I wasn't going to let it slide. I stared at her intently, my gaze icy and inscrutable. Her lips were pressed tightly together, her face tense as her eyes darted between Paul and Joel. Joel tugged at my sleeve, signaling for me to tone it down. I raised my voice deliberately. "Why are you pulling my sleeve?" The noisy chatter around us quieted down. Joel, half exasperated and half pleading, whispered, "Let's settle this at home." I feigned confusion and loudly asked, "What did you just say?" This time, he didn't dare respond. I stayed rooted in place, refusing to move on to the next table, my gaze fixed on Ava. Paul, attempting to defuse the tension, said, "Ava, you should thank your sister-in-law. Without her, you wouldn't be living so comfortably now. She should apologize." I said coldly, my voice laced with frost. Ava finally played her trump card. Her eyes reddened, brimming with unshed tears. As she looked at me pitifully, on the verge of crying, I slapped her across the face, the crisp sound echoing. This time, the tears fell for real. I shouted angrily, "Crying on my wedding day? Who are you cursing?" The room fell silent. Guests further away stood up, craning their necks to see what had happened. Joel's mother quickly rushed over, her tone nervous. "What's going on here?" Joel tried to downplay it. "Nothing, Mom. Just a small misunderstanding." As he spoke, he tried to drag me away by force. I yanked my arm free and raised it high for emphasis. Then, pointing at Paul and Ava, I rasped, "It's not nothing, Mom. This woman here is Ava. She started crying the moment she arrived. What's she trying to curse our family with? If I didn't slap her, should I have let her stay the night?" Joel's mother nodded, then turned to Paul. "Paul, did your girlfriend cry just now?" Paul, utterly stunned, stood speechless, unable to defend himself. Joel was equally at a loss. He couldn't very well tell his mother. "Mom, Ava wasn't crying until my wife slapped her." Joel's mother sighed heavily. "If that's the case, Paul, I'm sorry, but you and your girlfriend should leave for now. I'll come to your house another day to apologize." No, it's our fault. We'll leave right away," Paul said, hastily agreeing. As I watched them leave, Ava glanced back at me just before stepping out the door, her gaze venomous. I met her look with a cold, mocking smile, dripping with disdain. Chapter 9. I continued making rounds with Joel, offering toasts at each table. The task was done, and the drama had played out. "I feel a bit bored now," For a long time to come, Paul and Ava would be unable to hold their heads high in our circle. Their reputation was already half ruined. Feeling drained and finding the wedding banquet increasingly dull, I suddenly noticed Aunt Sandra approaching. Speaking of Aunt Sandra, she and I had some history. When Joel's mother fell ill, they originally hired a retired nurse to care for her. The nurse was very competent, and I wasn't even needed. Later, however, Joel's mother received word from her family asking her to look after one of their own, and so the capable nurse was dismissed, replaced by Aunt Sandra, who had no clue about caregiving. When Aunt Sandra wanted to slack off, she claimed she didn't understand how to help, insisting I was more experienced from learning from the nurse. When she wanted to suppress me, she played the elder card, acting as Joel's mother's trusted ally. I had originally planned to deal with her after the wedding, but today, I was in high spirits, and there's no time like the present. Aunt Sandra leaned in close and whispered, "Your mother-in-law asked me to tell you, when you toast Paul's father later, make sure to apologize. Let's not push things too far." At that moment, I had one hand on the table and the other holding some candies. Aunt Sandra rested her arm on my shoulder as she spoke. Upon hearing her words, I deliberately leaned into her, pretending to be pushed, and fell to the ground. My hand on the table pulled the tablecloth with me. In an instant, the entire table's food and drink crashed to the floor. The sound of plates and glasses shattering filled the banquet hall. I sat on the ground, kicking my legs and wailing, "Ah! I can't go through with this wedding. Wild women are causing a scene, and my mother-in-law still expects me to endure it." "Ah, ah, ah." Joel rushed over, trying to help me up, but I refused. In the end, he had to pick me up and carry me out. The banquet ended in chaos. With this, Ava was completely nailed to the pillar of shame. As for me, the reputation of being a shrew spread far and wide, but I knew very well that in those days, if you didn't care about your reputation, the title of shrew could bring you significant benefits. Chapter 10. Joel had the driver take me back to the wedding house while he stayed behind to clean up the mess. I watched his retreating figure and let out a faint, cold laugh. In the wedding house, I drank the ceremonial wedding wine alone. After the two dramatic scenes at the banquet, it seemed unlikely that anyone would come to disrupt the wedding night. The warm alcohol slid down my throat, bringing a rare sense of satisfaction. I soon fell into a deep sleep. In a daze, I heard Joel return. He was talking with his secretary at the door. The secretary said, "Don't go back to the old house for a while. The impact is too bad. Wait for some time, and it'll be better if Lisa gets pregnant. Once your mother calms down, you can return." Just as I wanted. I turned over and went back to sleep. Suddenly, a chill crept over me. I knew Joel had climbed into bed. He nudged me a few times, but seeing I was sound asleep, he turned away and leaned against the headboard. He sat there the whole night. I wasn't in a deep sleep, so I vaguely sensed him sitting awake until dawn. What was he thinking about? Regretting marrying me? This was just the beginning, but what had to come couldn't be avoided. If someone wanted to gain something, there was always a price to pay. For now, I had to deal with small matters and people unworthy of my time. But that was just how the beginning stages had to be, a little restrained and strategic. After the wedding leave ended, I found time to go to the hospital for a sterilization procedure, only to be told I was already pregnant. Without hesitation, I changed the sterilization to an abortion. Abortions at that time were done without anesthesia. A tool like a large spoon was inserted into the uterus to scrape around. The pain felt as if all my internal organs were being torn apart. In the operating room, several women underwent the procedure together, and the air was filled with their agonized screams. The doctor, accustomed to such scenes, showed no concern or comfort, their face blank and detached. Trembling, I climbed down from the operating table and sipped a bowl of brown sugar water in a daze. I silently swore to myself that in this life, if I didn't accomplish something significant, I wouldn't forgive myself. Chapter 11. I returned to my parents' home to recover after the procedure and took the opportunity to advise my mother to take proper precautions at work and not to be careless. I also visited my grandmother, urging her to get a full checkup at the hospital, which I paid for. Additionally, I suggested to my parents that they bring my grandmother to live with them, since my brother would eventually need her house after getting married. It was better to make the move sooner rather than later. My parents agreed. Joel came to my parents' house for a meal with us, thinking I had various matters to handle while staying there. He didn't ask many questions. Once back at the wedding house, I immersed myself in intense study. I still had a good recollection of the first reinstated Gaokao, college entrance exam, papers, having analyzed them repeatedly during my past attempts. But I couldn't afford to be complacent. I discussed my plans with Joel, explaining that the Gaokao was only 6 months away, so I wouldn't be taking up a job for the time being. He readily agreed. As per our pre-marriage agreement, he handed over his entire salary to me, and I allotted him pocket money. The first time he received pocket money from me, the corners of his lips turned up slightly, and he looked genuinely pleased. He was delighted, seeing it as a sign that we were beginning to reconcile. I knew Joel didn't lack money. His parents had high salaries and often supported him financially. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to save as much as he had to give me. But this ritual wasn't about the money, it was a test of submission and a statement about the balance of power within our household. For as long as I lived here, I needed to carve out a space for myself, a secure and respectable space. In my past life, my personal space had been completely squeezed out. In this life, if kindness couldn't blossom, I would let it grow thorns instead. Chapter 12. The shrew label served as a shield, protecting me from unnecessary harassment, but not always. I avoided going to Joel's family home, but Joel's mother wasn't about to let me off that easily. She sent someone to call me back, and since I'd been waiting for this opportunity, I agreed to go. As expected, the moment I stepped inside, Joel's mother glanced at me indifferently and pointed to a dirty bedsheet lying in the middle of the living room. Sandra's been sick, so I've been handling all the housework these past few days. I can't manage this. You do it, she said, her tone measured, making it hard to refuse. In those days, it was common practice for daughters-in-law to help with housework at their in-laws' place on weekends. But I wasn't intimidated. This wasn't my first encounter with her tactics. In my previous life, this was how they tormented me. Not only did they insist that I wash the bedsheets by hand, but my mother-in-law would also demand that I hang them outside to dry, saying the sheets needed the smell of sunlight. Every time I struggled to hoist the heavy, soaked sheets onto the clothesline, I was left exhausted. In cold weather, washing clothes left me drenched in sweat, prone to catching colds, and with chapped, cracked hands. This time, though, I had no intention of playing along. I casually tossed the sheet into the water, gave it a few symbolic scrubs, and then went off to the side to read a book. After letting it soak for a while, I wrung it out and hung it on the clothesline. The spot where I hung the sheet happened to be a popular play area for children. They were thrilled to see the sheet hanging there, and within moments, they were running back and forth, weaving through it until the sheet fell to the ground. I gathered a few of the children and took them to their parents. Going door to door, I explained, "I've already washed this sheet once, and I simply can't do it again. My mother-in-law won't be happy about how dirty it is now. So whichever child knocked it down, their mother will need to help me wash it again." This set off a chain reaction, dragging several families into the mess. The entire courtyard turned chaotic. Some parents scolded their kids, while others begrudgingly washed the sheet. When Joel's father came home from work, he had a clear idea of what had happened just by observing the scene as he walked in. He entered with a grim expression, glancing first at me and then at Joel's mother. Chapter 13. I didn't stay for dinner. I hurried back home in a sorry state, but my hands remained intact, and I hadn't exhausted my energy. I heard that Joel's mother got the worst end of the deal and was thoroughly scolded by Joel's father. Joel's father had said, "You know she's a shrew, and yet you provoke her? Are you trying to make trouble for me? Even if she's a mad dog, if she's lying there quietly and you insist on poking her with a stick, it's still your fault." Joel's mother was so angry that she cried nonstop. Joel found out about the incident the next day. When he returned home, his face was tight with anger. I didn't bother being polite, keeping my face cold and making a show of slamming things around. Suddenly, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward him. "Lisa, you used to be so kind and gentle. What's happened to you?" It's like you've become a completely different person." Even as he held me in his arms, I didn't bother to look at him directly. "What's this? Are you here to reprimand me?" Joel sighed. "How could I dare?" "Ha." I laughed mockingly. In my past life, when I was soft and meek, he had helped his mother bully me too. So I continued. "Good that you don't dare. Your family's problems are yours to deal with. If Sandra can't do the work, then hire another helper." She came under the pretense of attending my wedding, replaced the original housekeeper, and then refused to do her job, expecting me to take over. "What are you all thinking? That's pure fantasy." Joel looked at me in shock. "Lisa, why are you using such foul language? Aren't you someone preparing for college? So what if I curse when your family behaves like this? What good words do you expect me to say? We can stay married if it works out. If not, then let's divorce." Joel was utterly stunned. "Lisa, why do you keep bringing up divorce? Who could you possibly find if you left me?" I responded lightly. "Some people are more trouble than they're worth. Life might be better without them." His face turned pale. Chapter 14. My reputation as a shrew spread far and wide, leaving Joel's mother in a bind. Her facade of hypocrisy was starting to crack. She wanted me to return so she could continue tormenting me. But everyone knew about my fiery nature. I wouldn't back down or let myself be taken advantage of. If she tried to make me do chores again, it would be clear she was asking for trouble. But if she didn't have me come back, she would feel restless and unsatisfied. So, she resorted to speaking ill of me in front of Joel, claiming their family had married the wrong person and that I was far from being a virtuous wife. I learned all this from a few women in the courtyard who were close to me and just as renowned for their sharp tempers. One of them, Patricia, was my closest confidant. Her workplace was near my home, so she often stopped by to chat and share updates. When Joel came home, I greeted him with a cold face, refusing to speak to him. My strategy was simple: strike first with silent treatment, making him feel stuck between a rock and a hard place. Whatever arguments he'd prepared melted away under my frosty demeanor. Instead, he grew bewildered. Sometimes, he even tried to appease me. "Honey, what's wrong? Are you too stressed from studying? Tomorrow's the weekend. Let's go to the park and rent a boat." In the end, his mother was often left at home, stomping her feet in frustration but unable to do anything about me. Because I cared little for appearances, she, despite her elder status, could only face me on equal footing. Amid this constant push and pull, the Gaokao college entrance exam finally arrived. With several favorable factors on my side, I was admitted to the best university in the country. I was going to Beijing. When I received my acceptance letter, I broke down in tears. This was the opportunity one had waited 2 lifetimes for. I was finally leaving this place. Ava and Paul were both admitted to a local university. As for Joel, he had already been in university for some time and would graduate after another year. As everyone prepared to go their separate ways, Joel's mother urged him to divorce me, but he refused. That same evening, Joel prepared some simple dishes and sat down for a quiet drink alone. When I returned home late from my parents' house, Joel was slightly drunk. His face was flushed as he looked at me and said, "Lisa, if I hadn't given your spot to return to the city to Ava back then, would we still be okay?" I didn't answer, though I knew the truth in my heart. Those who are destined to betray you will always take that step. No matter what, Joel and I were never meant to have a happy ending. The past 6 months of enduring this enemy camp had been anything but easy. I'd only made it through by gritting my teeth. Lu Sun once said, "A true warrior dares to face a bleak reality and to confront bloodshed head-on." That quote had carried me this far. Chapter 15. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. During this time, I maintained normal communication with Joel. The fact that we lived apart, with little time together and a growing emotional distance, wasn't my fault. Paul, after attending university for a year, was sent abroad on a government-sponsored program. For the next 2 years, only Ava and Joel remained in our hometown. Paul once again asked Joel to look after Ava, and the two of them maintained contact during this time. After the fiasco at our wedding banquet, I couldn't understand what Paul was thinking. I knew Paul wasn't particularly cautious or attentive, but Ava's lack of discretion still surprised me. In my past life, I'd always believed that their initial relationship was innocent and only later crossed the line. But now, it seemed clear, at least on Ava's part, that wasn't the case. I suspected Ava was worried Paul wouldn't return, so she wanted to latch onto Joel as a backup. Joel later wrote me a letter explaining the situation. He admitted he felt guilty about what happened at the wedding banquet, particularly toward Paul's family. Paul had asked him for a favor before, but it didn't involve taking my spot to return to the city. Joel acknowledged that taking my place was his mistake. He also admitted that embarrassing Paul and Ava at the wedding banquet was his fault. Because of this guilt, he felt obligated to take care of Ava now and urged me not to overthink it. I didn't reply. That winter break, I rarely came home. When I walked into the house, I immediately noticed that only Joel and Ava were there. They were in the kitchen, busy cooking together, and didn't hear me come in. I quietly left without alerting them. I headed straight to the old courtyard and found Patricia and a few other women, friends who knew both Joel and Ava. They had a penchant for gossip and weren't afraid of stirring up trouble. When we all entered my house together, the sound of Joel and Ava laughing and chatting was unmistakable. I looked at the group of women with a wry smile and said, "See? What did I tell you? I wasn't imagining things, was I?" They all wore expressions of disdain, their contempt for the situation clear. I handed out peanuts and sunflower seeds to my sisters, and we all sat down, ready for the show. When Joel and Ava came out of the kitchen, carrying the dishes they had prepared, they froze in place upon seeing the room full of people. The slight ambiguity in the atmosphere between them was amplified infinitely under the scrutiny of so many onlookers. Joel hurriedly set the dishes on the table, wiped his hands with his apron, and came over to me, a hint of panic in his voice. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming back? I would have picked you up from the station." I looked at him with a smirk, my face full of mockery. "I've been hearing rumors about the two of you for a while. I thought I'd stage a surprise attack to see if I could catch you red-handed. And you didn't disappoint me at all. What are we waiting for, ladies? Let's go!" I smashed a cup to signal the start, leading the charge. I grabbed Ava by the hair and shoved her to the ground. "You little tramp! Will you die if you stop seducing men? Instead of being a good college student, you'd rather go after someone else's man?" The rest of the women enthusiastically joined in. Joel, snapping out of his daze, rushed forward to try to pull us apart. In the chaos, someone scratched his face, leaving him disheveled and embarrassed. We gave Ava a good beating, not too harsh, but enough to teach her a lesson. Humiliation was the goal. When it was over, we walked out triumphantly, leaving them behind to deal with the aftermath. The story of Joel and Ava being caught in the act spread like wildfire. Not content with just that, I also went to Ava's school to make a scene. As a result, Ava graduated but wasn't allowed to stay on as faculty. Instead, she was sent to where the country needed her most, a remote, underdeveloped area. Her shortcut to avoid time in the countryside was ultimately restored to her. Later, I heard that Ava lost all of Paul's hard-earned money in the stock market again. Furious, Paul returned to China and caused a massive uproar. This time, though, there was no Joel to take the blame for her, and no Joel to cover for her losses. Unable to recover his money, Paul used every method at his disposal to utterly ruin Ava, leaving her with nothing. As for Joel, I didn't spare him either. I went to his workplace and created a scene, accusing him of having poor morals and questionable character. When even his own wife was openly attacking him, his employer's trust in him wavered. After my repeated actions, Joel's career finally took a hit, making any future promotions a steep uphill battle. Joel's mother once again urged him to divorce me, but he refused. Later, Joel's mother fell ill, just as she had in my past life. This time, however, she couldn't take any pleasure in tormenting me. Joel's career and love life were both in shambles. Adding to her mental anguish, her illness progressed rapidly, and she passed away within a few years. Chapter 16. The next time I met Joel was in a cafe. I asked him, "Why don't you just get a divorce? Wouldn't you be free then?" He looked at me with a calm expression. "I've thought about it a lot. After everything, I woke up one day and decided that for the rest of this life, I'll treat you well, no matter how you treat me." I was taken aback. This wasn't the answer I expected. His words left me at a loss for how to persuade him. And so, our conversation ended there. Not long after, when news spread that I had also been selected for a government-sponsored study abroad program, Joel came to see me again. He sincerely wished me well in this life. Take care of yourself. I'll never be foolish again. I'll wait for you at home. After I arrived in Country M and completed my enrollment procedures, I wrote Joel a letter, the first one I had ever initiated. Why write it at that time? Because if I'd written earlier, I was afraid he might sabotage my chance to study abroad. In the letter, I wrote, after the spot for the study abroad program was finalized, I was on guard against you. I knew Ava had also applied. The selection wasn't handled by universities but arranged by the Ministry of Education. I was afraid you'd try to help Ava compete with me again, so I staged the affair incident to tarnish your reputations first. This was a preemptive strike to prevent future trouble. Of course, if the two of you were clean, I wouldn't have had the opportunity. Joel, you are exactly the type of person I need to guard against, a husband I can't rely on. Trust between us was gone long ago. Breaking up is the best choice for both of us, and dragging it out won't help anyone. I will always fear you might betray me again, and I will never forgive you. Stop delaying the divorce, it benefits no one. Think it over carefully. Chapter 17. During a visit home, Joel and I finalized our divorce. He sighed. I owe you from our past life. In this one, I'll let you go. I glanced at him indifferently. Let's hope we never meet in the next life. Afterward, I returned to Country M, where I actively promoted China's reform and opening up policies among overseas Chinese communities, encouraging business people to invest back home. It was an era where we traded shirts for airplanes. When I eventually returned to China, I used the money I had earned through work-study programs abroad and applied advanced management practices to join the wave of industrial development and national progress. In doing so, I made my second chance at life worthwhile.